It starts with a quiet rumble, a stirred teacup of tension at Maranello. A whisper becomes a roar. Ferrari and Leclerc drop a bombshell on Lewis Hamilton. It starts with a 7-time world champion, Lewis Hamilton, looking lost, saying, "Useless." Not once, but in front of the world. That's a trigger. Something's glitched. What happened to the invincible Mr. Cool from Mercedes? What gears ground inside Ferrari to make him crack? And could this crack make his retirement come early as Ferrari is looking elsewhere? And then, boom, out walks Fred Vasseur, Ferrari's team boss, eyes weary but clear. Lewis and we collectively, probably underestimated the change of environment. Imagine two mountaineers stepping off the familiar trail, and suddenly at the summit, bewildered. That's the moment Hamilton and Ferrari hit their Everest. After 18 years at Mercedes, from McLaren to Mercedes, one English-based team, the same engine, the same culture. Then, bam, Ferrari. Vasseur says, "We were stupidly expecting that he will have everything under control." Harsh words, stupidity in the house of speed. The story deepens. It wasn't just a new seat, it was a whole new world. Vasseur explains how Charles Sainz hopped teams like a grasshopper: Toro Rosso, Renault, McLaren, Ferrari, Williams, all within 8 years. Hamilton? Same place for nearly 2 decades. That kind of comfort, now shattered. But spoilers aren't over yet. Vasseur hints at a glimmer of return. It took Lewis 4 or 5 races to be a bit more in control, and I would say that from Canada, Spain, UK, Austria, he was there. The drama. It's like watching someone swim against the current, then suddenly catch a powerful stroke. Yet, even that stride faltered. Spa was a rough weekend in qualifying, though Hamilton showed brilliance in the race. And then Hungary. Charles pole. Hamilton out in Q2. That's where Hamilton muttered, "Useless." Not to flick his nose, but because it hurt. It's the utter honesty of a champion grappling with being lost. Vasseur isn't rubbing salt in the wound. He's repairing it, brick by careful brick. Fixing the details, he says. Fine-tuning, point by point. Because on the razor edge of F1, a brake feeling slightly off can drop you 1/10 of a second. And that's the difference between making Q3 or not. Between P1 and P12. 1/2, and your weekend flips. Even more human. Vasseur says Hamilton's edge, his fearlessness, often comes from being mega big demanding of everyone, but especially himself. He's like this. I understand the philosophy. He's very, very demanding with me, with the engineers, with the mechanics, but mainly with himself. And that, he says, is okay, as long as the driver pushes himself first. It's a portrait of perfectionism, wearing down the perfectionist. Now, enter Charles Leclerc, the teammate, the foil, the calm center. Leclerc tells us, "At the end of the day, we are both pushing to try and make Ferrari better. He's preparing his points, I'm preparing my points. We are doing big meetings. We speak about those points that we want to improve." It's a schoolyard sketch. 2 students with their homework points on the desk, comparing notes, not fighting. Leclerc keeps it steady. Of course, we are aligned. Everybody is pushing in the same direction so that there's no stress whatsoever. He's watering down the explosive headline, saying, this energy didn't just start now. Obviously, it's a unique point of view, and Lewis had an incredible career, but it didn't only start now. And he coolly deflates the bombshell. I don't think there's anything standing out now. Maybe it's the first time he said it, so that's why it makes such a reaction. But it's nothing particular to this moment. There's the question humming in the air. Can Hamilton find his rhythm in these little details? Can Ferrari turn the sum of tiny fixes into a throne-worthy giant? And can Leclerc keep the peace, or is there an undercurrent he's hiding? Hamilton, lost in red. Leclerc, steady in his silence. Vasseur, calling their own expectations stupid. Ferrari promised glory and got a storm. But this isn't just about a rough season. This is about the shock of greatness looking mortal. Ferrari is still Ferrari, a cathedral of racing, a symbol, a pressure cooker of dreams. So when Lewis Hamilton, the man of 7 world titles, the storm chaser of wet Sundays, comes in, you don't expect him to struggle with the brakes, yet that's exactly where we land. Vasseur admits, if you are struggling with the brakes, you are speaking about half a tenth, and half a tenth is the difference between getting into Q3 or not. Think about that. A few centimeters of pedal feel, a subtle flick of confidence. That's all it takes to tumble from the front row to the midfield wilderness. And Hamilton, he's not silent about it. He feels it, loud. Vasseur says, it's true that Lewis, sometimes he is a bit extreme on his guys and says, I have a mega big issue. But is this really a mega big issue? In terms of results, yes. There it is. The contradiction, the pain, the irony. It's not a crisis to Ferrari, it's just details. But for Hamilton, every detail is a volcano. His feedback is heat, not because he's dramatic, but because every race is a referendum on his legacy. So, Ferrari brought in familiar faces from Mercedes, Loic Serra, Jerome D'Ambrosio, Luca Diella, friends in a foreign land, echoes of Brackley in the red corridors of Maranello. It helps, but not enough. The culture shock still hits. Vasseur spells it out. Culturally speaking, there is a bigger difference between Ferrari and Mercedes than between Mercedes and McLaren. And this we underestimated. Ferrari is passion. It's pressure. It's politics in red overalls. Mercedes is clinical, a polished empire. And now, Hamilton's trying to be fluent in a new racing language. But what if he doesn't have time to learn? Here's where things get even more complicated. Because while Hamilton is wrestling the beast, Charles Leclerc is whispering to it. Leclerc is doing exactly what Ferrari loves: driving fast, staying quiet, and never throwing sparks. He isn't threatened by Hamilton. He's calm, diplomatic, almost surgical in his statements. We are both pushing to try and make Ferrari better. Everybody is pushing in the same direction so that there's no stress whatsoever. But there is a kind of quiet dismissal in his tone. Leclerc speaks of Hamilton's feedback like something interesting, but not decisive. Obviously, it's a unique point of view, but it didn't only start now. In other words, Hamilton didn't invent technical feedback at Ferrari. And then, the coldest cut of all. I don't think there's anything standing out now. Maybe it's the first time he said it, so that's why it makes such a reaction. Translation? Chill. Lewis might be loud, but nothing's really changed. And that, right there, is the bombshell. Not a crash, not a scandal. But this subtle tension. Hamilton screams inside his helmet. Leclerc barely blinks. One fights to adjust the machine. The other is the machine. One brings fire. The other brings ice. So now the question is terrifyingly simple. What happens if Hamilton doesn't crack the code? Ferrari isn't kicking him out. They've invested too much. And Vasseur is playing the long game. I don't want to give details, but point by point, I think we are fixing the issues. But this isn't an engineering story. It's an identity crisis. Hamilton isn't just trying to win races. He's trying to prove he can be great without the empire of Mercedes behind him. He's trying to show he can rise anywhere, even at Ferrari, where legends come to be either immortalized or broken. And Leclerc, he's already chosen his role. He's not here to fight. He's here to outlast. The fans? They see the cracks. They see the timing sheets. They see Leclerc on pole and Hamilton in Q2, head down, calling himself useless. But maybe that word wasn't a breakdown. Maybe it was a warning shot. Maybe Hamilton knows what no one else does. That behind the calm smiles and controlled quotes, this story isn't heading toward comfort. It's heading toward confrontation. So here's how we leave it. Ferrari admits they got it wrong. Stupidly, in their own words. Hamilton is bleeding seconds in the shadows of corners. Leclerc is keeping the peace, with a tone that feels like control. And the smallest details, just half a tenth, could ignite the next explosion. The question now is simple, but nuclear. Will Lewis Hamilton rise? Or is Ferrari slowly, quietly, making him irrelevant? Are they really trying to get rid of one of the GOATs?